Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Pip, and today we are going to be in the kitchen because you might hear our new friend crunching in the background. We have a little puppy called Dobby with us today. He is my parents' dog, and he's cute as a button, but he's just been rescued and they're off on holidays. So we've got Dobby for a little while, and it's hungry o'clock at all times. So the little pork chop has just been trying to steal my garlic from the bench and stealing capsicums and beans from the harvest basket. So we needed to give Dobby something else to do. So he's currently crunching on a pig's ear. So apologies for the crunching sounds in the background. But we're going to be dealing with a lot of produce today. We are first going to be dealing with the tomatoes because they need to go in the oven for a while. I'm going to make just a really basic pasta sauce out of them, and I'm cutting them all open because we have fruit fly, and I just uncovered a exploded tomato in the harvest basket that I harvested 2 days ago, and there were all these little grubs in it. So now I'm paranoid that there's fruit fly in every single tomato, so we're going to cut every single tomato open to make sure that there is not fruit fly. But it does make me paranoid to the point where I'm thinking of maybe tomorrow I'll just go out and harvest every single tomato, whether it's ripe or not, just so they can't come and invade the house, because once they're in the house they're in everything and they're so annoying, and you can't always tell. Like sometimes it's really obvious, there's like a black sting mark on the tomatoes. It's really obvious when they've been stung, and sometimes you think it's fine and it's not. The other reason we're in the kitchen today is because there is a cyclone hitting Queensland, and that rain was supposed to come down and wash us out of the garden. It is perfectly sunny and no rain. But we had everything defrosted and planned for a rainy day, so that's what we're going to do. And we've obviously got all this produce that needs to be dealt with because it is ready to go. So we're also going to be dealing with the tromboncinos. The tromboncinos we harvested together just recently, and they're supposed to have, when they're gone orange like this, a nutty flavor, but be kind of like a butternut pumpkin or a winter squash. So what I thought I would do is do my favorite pumpkin soup recipe, but do it with the tromboncino and just see how it differs. We also have pumpkins that we need to deal with at some point. That doesn't have to be done today. And today might end up carrying over into tomorrow because we have a little girl's birthday party that needs to be readied for once my best friend gets home and tells me that it's time to come and start making fairy bread. So we've got a lot happening in the kitchen today, and we've got a lot of produce to get through. I've got a whole bunch of new recipes that I want to try. A lot of them are from Nagi, who is a chef that I mentioned that I love in our last video when we were in the kitchen. She's an Australian chef, but her dog is her sous chef and her head test taster. So to me that sounds like a excellent way to run your operations. So yeah, and to be honest, every recipe I've ever tried of hers has been excellent. And I have a quarter of a cow in the freezer, and I don't really know what to do with it. So I am going to make some of her recipes to use up various slices. Like I didn't know what to do with a silver side slice of meat, so we're going to be dealing with that. I grew up as a steak and 3 veg girl at home. That was just what we were served, and so steak is not something that I seek out at all. And yeah, so I've been a little slower going through this quarter of a cow than I thought I would be, because it's not actually that much. But I want to be having a lot more meals that are either prepped in the freezer or that I can run through the freeze dryer. So I have a freeze dryer, so that's something that I saved up for to get. And I haven't used it a lot this season. I don't know why, I just haven't. And I really want to get into making a lot more meals and having them ready to go, so that all I have to do is add hot water. And I've been feeling soupy, if you can feel soupy, and I really feel like I want to try a few different soups. I've been feeling quite run down since I had surgery a week ago. It was only minor surgery. To be fair, a lot of other things happened last week, none of which were nice. So I don't know whether it's that that's making me feel run down, or the fact that I've not reduced my chocolate intake and increased my protein intake like I had planned, because last week was so rubbish. So I've been feeling soupy and I don't really have any soups in the freezer. So we're going to make a bunch of soups, and I want to make a bunch that are using all the bone broth that I have canned up, because when I got the quarter of a cow, they also gave me 50 kilos of beef bones, some of which were a bit stinky, so they went to the dogs. But I got a ton of bones for free, and so I have copious amounts of what I call human broth, which basically just means there's onion and salt and that sort of stuff in it, whereas the puppy broth is just the meat and the water, and that's all. So if you see labels that say human broth, well, I was going to say I'm not insane, but that's probably stretching it, but that's what that's about. But I want to try and use a lot of the broth in soups. Usually I just use it in things like spaghetti bolognese or meat sauces, or occasionally I'll make a noodle soup with them. But I don't like just drinking the broth, but I really want the health benefits from it, and I'm really feeling like I kind of need something to recharge me, and I'm feeling like broth is the way forward. So we're going to be making some stuff with like a beef soup, hopefully, and hopefully it will be really tasty. And I would also like to freeze dry that as well, so that if it's really nice, I can make a bunch of it, and I want to have a whole bunch of things like chili con carne and all that stuff ready to go, so that all I have to do is add hot water and it's good to go. So for those days where I'm just like not feeling it, or where, you know, life is getting the better of me, as it seems to do a lot lately, I can just add hot water, have a very nutritious meal that is grown from home, except for this tomato. This can go away. And see, if I had roasted that tomato without cutting it open first, I never would have known that that was absolutely black inside, because it felt normal, it looked normal. Gross. But yeah, so we're trying to get the health journey going. Come on, self, we can do it. You can get off the chocolate. But first things first, I need to get these potatoes. Why do I keep calling tomatoes potatoes? Just for the future, if I say potatoes and it looks like a tomato, I meant tomato. And if I say potato and it looks like, oh God, I stuffed it up again. If I say tomato and it looks like a potato, then it's a potato, okay? You guys just can work it out visually what it is if I'm stuffing it up, okay? Because life's too hard and I can't remember words, okay? Because my brain isn't working very well. So I'm just going to chop up all of these tomatoes and get them ready. And then what I'm gonna do is add some onion. And we've got our, I want to say Queensland blue, but that's not a pumpkin. I'm really doing well with the words. These are New Zealand red garlic. This is the first time I ever grew garlic, and it's still surviving. And I have treated it so badly, I just left it on a cardboard box drying by the front door. I haven't put it anywhere that it is cool, dark, anything, and it is still holding on. And it has been a couple of months, so I'm a bit lucky. But I want to add some garlic in here. I don't like eating roast garlic on its own, but I love garlic. So we're going to be dumping a whole bunch of garlic in here. We're going to roast it with the onion, and we're going to get everything nice and almost like caramelized. And then we're just going to be making a basic tomato paste type pasta sauce from it, because it just seems like the easiest way to deal with a whole bunch of tomatoes all in one go when I am not in the mood to can and can't be bothered to freeze them because the freezer is already pretty full. Okay, so 600 hours later, we've got the tomato sauce in the oven. So that will bake for about an hour until everything's kind of looking nice and juicy and soft. Then once that's done, I'm going to blitz it up, taste it, and then I might add either some dried herbs or some fresh basil, or see what it needs. We'll taste it once it's done. But now I'm going to move on to my pumpkin soup, which I just make a Thermomix recipe, and I've also got to make another Thermomix recipe at some point this weekend for banana bread. And these are very, very reliable recipes. They always turn out really well. To be honest, a lot of other Thermomix recipes I've tried have been pretty bland, but these ones are really nice. It dices up the onion for me, so I just put the onion in and I'll put a little bit of butter. It'll cook it slightly. Then we've got to add 500 grams of pumpkin. In this case, we're going to be using the tromboncinos. We've got 2 carrots to add, a little bit of salt and pepper, some veggie stock paste, and 500 mils of water. And I think that's everything, and that gets us to a really beautiful pumpkin soup. So while the onion is sauteing in the Thermomix, we're going to get our tromboncino ready. We're using this one because it's got a like a cut mark into the skin from the Rio mesh, and it's a bit squishy around there. It's also been the one that was sitting on the ground for the longest, so the external part of the skin was damaged, so I don't think it will store that well. Ideally, I'd wait till it was this orange, but I don't want to actually lose something that's 3.5 kilos. My best friend just appeared to get some things for the party tomorrow, and she said she cooked the one I gave her and that it was super, super nice, really, really nutty, and they roasted theirs. And I'm going to have plenty to roast some for dinner tonight to try that as well. It does have like a slight whiteness to the skin, which does seem to wash off, but obviously I'm going to cut the skin off for the pumpkin soup. But I'm pretty excited to try this tromboncino. You do get, you can see that it's not 100% ripe. It's got some green around the outside, so there still will be an element of the zucchini, I would think, to this. But you do kind of get this sticky residue stuff on your hands from cutting it, almost like you've been playing with super glue. So we'll just get this cut up now. We'll remove the skin, dice it up into 2-centimeter cubes to get it ready to go into the Thermomix once the onion's done within the next minute or two. So hopefully you guys can see the beads of juice coming out of this, and that is what is going to create that sticky residue on my hands, but we will live to fight another day. But I just wanted to show you close up the skin damage from it being sitting on the ground for so many months, the damage the Rio bar made it where it's a little bit squishy. But we'll get this chopped up, then we'll get 2 carrots out, get them chopped up, and then we're going to blitz them until they're well and truly broken down in the Thermomix. Then we're going to add 500 mils of water. We're going to, in theory, add 1 tablespoon of veggie stock paste, which is another Thermomix recipe, and I love the flavor of it, so I always add at least 2 tablespoons. And then we'll cook it for 20 minutes and it'll be done. So we've got 500 grams of tromboncino in the Thermomix, and now we just need to add the 2 carrots. If I'm following my leaky gut diet and avoiding the things that I'm sensitive to, I should not be eating carrot at all. But I mean, who's sensitive to carrot, really? But I just want to do like a really fair test of the tromboncino versus a pumpkin soup, and normally I would eat it with carrot, but if I am being good and not eating carrot, I just put more pumpkin in instead of carrot. But I just, as I said, I want to do a fair comparison and see what like for like is like. This chili con carne recipe is also one of Nagi's recipes, which I'll link below in the description box. The actual recipe itself is very, very similar to my spaghetti bolognese, except for the spices. And I just wanted to get the spices right, which was why I was going with the recipe. As usually if I was just making chili con carne, it wouldn't actually have spices and things like that in it, because I'm not generally bold enough to mix my own, and I don't like things spicy. But I wanted to try this recipe also because I wanted something reliable that tasted good, that I could also freeze dry and meal prep that way. Okay, so let's give our tromboncino pumpkin soup. I guess it's not really a pumpkin. I've got two black Labradors. Well, you're not really a Labrador, are you, W? But you are a bit like a Labrador in that you want to eat everything. Get down. Let's try the tromboncino soup. Ooh, that's really nice. Definitely very much a nutty flavor, but it comes in a little bit later. Oh, that's lovely. That's really nice. It's quite light. I actually reckon that's nicer than pumpkin soup. Pumpkin soup, I feel like I really want to eat it with toast, but this is nice. You don't need toast with this. Oh. We're definitely turning the rest of that tromboncino into tromboncino pumpkin soup. And I reckon I'm gonna do a tray of that and freeze dry it and powder it so that I can have this soup on standby anytime I want, especially seeing I've got so many tromboncinos and I've got like 5 or 6 more at least on the vine. And yeah, we're gonna have tromboncinos coming out our ears, and we've got pumpkins down here that we still got to deal with, and the Dobby that's crashing around with a cone of shame. But this is really, really nice. Tromboncino soup, yes. And I would actually grow this in preference to pumpkin because it's so much more productive than pumpkin, and it's way more fun than pumpkin, and the vine is hardy as, and this is just delightful. So good. This looks so beautiful. I'm just going to transfer it all into a pot, and then I will blitz it all together. Then we can taste it and see if it needs any more seasoning or any herbs, and just see how we go. It's a bit liquidy, so I might cook it down a little bit, but let's taste it. Now I'm fully expecting with the amount of garlic I put in for the garlic to blow my hair back a bit, which is exactly what I want. I love garlic and I love salt, so if this is garlicky and salty, I'll be happy. Oddly, there is very little taste, so I'm going to add some more salt and we'll retest taste it. I added a little bit more salt and it made a huge difference. I could actually taste the garlic. I find it so odd that something as strong in flavor and scent as garlic can taste like nothing until you put some salt in. So I'm going to put a generous tablespoon of salt in. And I say a generous tablespoon because obviously I didn't measure it, so I don't exactly know. And I always feel like you watch cooking programs and they say about a tablespoon, especially like Jamie Oliver, who I love. And it's like, Jamie, that wasn't a tablespoon, that was a handful of salt. So we put some. So we put extra pepper in as well. Still needs a little bit more salt. And to be honest, I could happily go more garlic. I know that seems insane because I had like 50 cloves of garlic in there at least, but I like garlic. Good, good. I just don't understand how salt makes garlic taste like garlic, but it does. To try and thicken this up a bit, I've got some options. So I could add some freeze-dried tomato powder. I could add some freeze-dried garlic. I could add some of my freeze-dried basil, but I kind of like this as it is. So what I'm going to do is just maybe cook it for a little bit on the stove, maybe give it half an hour and see after it's simmered for half an hour where it's at. In the meantime, we've got crazy puppy witching hour and the chili con carne is ready, so I'm going to give that a little try and then go and supervise these mad hounds. It's definitely witching hour for Dobby. You know, I can't believe they thought he was 2 years old. He's a puppy eating electrical cords and being a menace to society. He's that puppy. It's got a nice little spicy kick, but it's not too spicy. But I reckon I could quite happily have put in more of the herbs and spices, but it's nice. Okay, so I am now excessively full and I've got a lot of dishes to do, so I'm going to get everything packed away and cleaned up and we're going to come back and continue on tomorrow. We're going to make more tromboncino soup, but I'll probably just make that and you guys don't need to see that again. I'm going to freeze some of the tomato sauce and then I'm going to freeze dry some because when I freeze dry it, it's going to pull all the liquid out. And so then I'm going to be able to thicken it to a level that I like, but it just tastes really nice. So I don't want to mess with it too much. And the chili con carne, I'm going to get some dished up so that I can have it for lunch tomorrow when I get back from the birthday party. And some will go in the freezer. And yeah, we've got a lot more to make tomorrow, but I think that's enough for today. It's enough mess for one day and enough crazy Dobby for one day. We are back and it's the next day and we're working on Nagi's beef vegetable stew. So the first thing I've got in here is my stewing beef that is being aggressively browned. So I'm doing that in batches because I'm making a triple batch, because this is exactly the type of soup that I would like. Not that I've made this recipe before, and it's also what I'm really looking for with like a soup with a hearty beef broth. And I want to have enough to try and freeze dry it and see what that's like as well. So yesterday we ended up putting freezer trays for 2 batches of the tromboncino soup and 2 trays of the tomato sauce paste. And since then the tomatoes that hadn't gone red have gone red, and we've picked a whole another bowl of them today. So we've still got tomatoes coming in vast quantities that I can't keep up with. So I'll have to think of something different to do with these ones. And I did 1 tray of the chili con carne, and I want to freeze dry that. And ultimately my aim is to get to be having about 3 months worth of freeze dried food. And a lot of them I want to do in soups just because that's really easy to reconstitute. And like I've seen people do freeze drying with things like lasagna, but I would think that that would be very difficult to reconstitute and to make sure like the middle pieces of lasagna reconstitute without getting soggy. So I just would prefer to focus on things like this, chili con carne, spaghetti bolognese, that sort of thing. And that's not because I'm wanting to be a prepper, it's because I know that what is coming around the corner for me over the next few months is going to be fairly stressful, and I just want to make sure that I have these meals on standby, so that if I get to the point where I just can't be bothered or I'm not coping or whatever, there's meals ready to go that all I have to do is add water, that are like literally the equivalent of ramen noodles or 2-minute noodles, which I love but can't eat because I'm wheat intolerant and they make me really, really sick. And the other thing is, you don't want your freezer full of stuff all the time, because defrosting takes time. You've got to have thought of defrosting something the day before, or you've got to wait around for your microwave for ages, and not everything freezes well, and also like your power goes out sometimes and you don't want to run the risk of losing all your food. And if you've got the option of a freeze dryer, why not? But I am still going to freeze batches of this, so I'm hoping that by making a triple batch, we will have enough to freeze, enough to eat some today or tomorrow, and enough to trial freeze drying it to see how it goes. This is also a great way to I feel like that is aggressively browned, but I mean, I don't actually know what aggressively browned is. I might give it a little bit longer to be more aggressive. The other nice thing about doing these sort of tasks and focusing on trying to make a whole bunch of freezer meals or meals that I can freeze dry is that I am actually using up some of the products that I have in the freezer that have been in there for a while, and making space for things like tomatoes that are coming out of the garden that actually need to find a home until I'm ready to deal with them. And I bought a quarter of a cow a year ago with good intentions of doing all these things and eating more meat to try and get my iron levels up. And it turned out that I didn't really do a lot with it because I didn't know what to do with it. So I've got 1.5 kilos of round cut of beef here, which I've diced up, and I am, as I said, aggressively browning. And we're just going to turn this into a soup, and this is going to take out all the cuts of round beef that I had out of the freezer. We've got the silver side to deal with tonight, which again, I've never cooked with before. And there are things like rump steaks and ribs and stuff in there that I've never dealt with before, that I need to learn how to cook, need to find great recipes for. So if you have any, let me know. I've just never been a huge meat eater before, but now, because if I'm trying to be good on my leaky gut diet, which we could debate, because I'm going to put some carrots in here. But if I'm trying to be good and trying to at least eat better quality foods, eat better quality veg, try and get away from processed food, all of that sort of stuff to try and improve my health, well, I mean, I need to learn a whole bunch of different recipes, and I need to be eating more red meats, because chicken is one of the things on my list that I can't eat. Same with seafood, same with crab, same with just about everything. But so yeah, I need to focus on eating red meats and eating healthier, which was why I bought the quarter cow. And then it's just sat there in the freezer. It's still great quality meat, even though it's been in there for a year. But I want to get it out, start using it, work out how to use it, and work out if buying a quarter of a cow is going to be something that is more manageable going forward, because I now know what to do with a quarter of a cow, and I know now what comes in a quarter of a cow, because I had no idea. I was just like, yeah, mince and sausages, yeah. But yeah, so I mean, the meat certainly tastes a lot better. I always thought that I had terrible taste buds and that I couldn't taste anything, and what I've learned is that store-bought food doesn't taste like anything, and that's why I couldn't taste anything. I've pre-prepped everything else for the most part, so I've got all the celery diced up, garlic's ready to go, onion will go in next with the garlic. We've got some carrots. I'm using gluten-free flour for this, and then I've got previously canned jars of broth that we will be using for this, and I am going to be a bit liberal with the broth because, as I said, I really want a nice hearty broth soup. And then instead of the dry red wine, Guinness or stout, there is an option where you can use, where is it? Dobby, don't lick your wound. Dobby, 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 darling, don't lick your wound, sweetheart. Dobby can get to his wound even with the cone of shame on. So between that and his newfound love of electrical cords, it's been fun. And his starvation at 1 a.m. every night, where I find him face down in a bag of kibble. Okay, so anyway, instead of the alcohol, you can use a can of crushed tomatoes, 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce to add flavour. Now, the reason I'm doing that is because I don't really like wine, and anytime I add wine to beef stews and things like that, the smell of wine, which is the main thing I don't actually like about wine, I find to be overpowering. And something I learnt with the leaky gut diet testing that I did is that a lot of the things that I actually don't like cabbage, seafood, coffee, etc., I actually don't like, and they tested positive on the thing. So if I don't like something, I just don't force myself, and if there's an alternative, great. And plus, I don't have any red wine because I don't really drink, so if I'm trying to reduce the sugar and the nasties in my food, I feel like eating a whole bunch of tomatoes is better than dousing something in red wine. It says add 1.5 cups of water. I will probably do beef broth instead. And then we've got things like tomato paste, bay leaves, thyme, frozen peas, and spuds to add. So hopefully this should be really tasty. And it's got a mushroom option, but I just hate mushrooms. Gross. So this is Dobby, and Dobby was rescued from a kill shelter, and I can't remember if I've already told you this, but sorry if it's a double up. And I've got him because my parents are away, and obviously it's not ideal that we've had to take him on so early after he was adopted, but we had to get him out of the kill shelter because he was scheduled to be euthanized, but they decided that he was so lovely, which is so true, isn't it, Dobby, that he was too nice to euthanize. So we wanted to get him out of there, and he's a bit obsessed with Raffy, and he's had the snip nearly a week ago, which will hopefully mean that I no longer have to call him Humpelstiltskin. But Michael Dublé is settling in quite nicely here. He is wrecking everything with the cone of shame, and my 2 dogs are now terrified of the cone of shame. But he's pretty cute. So he is part Doberman, part Kelpie, apparently, which is why the shelter called him Dobby, which I said was unacceptable, and he needed to be called Dobby. And now he's got 50 million nicknames, like Paso Doble, Doubles, Mr. Doubleina, Mr. Bob Doubleina, Michael Dublé, and they're just the ones I can think of off the top of my head. So now that this beef is all done, I'm leaving the juices in there. I'm going to scoop the beef out, and then we're going to get the onion in, get the garlic in, and get all that going. I'm going to let the onion and the garlic cook in the beef juices, and then I'll add the beef back in once I'm putting the celery and the carrot and everything else in. But I just want to make sure my onions get cooked nicely. Your eyes do not deceive you. You do see the words human bone broth on top of these canning jars. And everyone always asks me about this, so I probably should just explain. I don't eat chicken because I'm not supposed to eat chicken based on allergy tests, and I don't like turkey broth. So the only broth I make for myself is beef broth. But I also make beef broth for my dogs. And so there's puppy broth and there's human broth. And human broth has things like salt and pepper and onions and things that is not in the puppy broth. So that's had a little bit of time to cook. Now I've just got to mix the flour through and then slowly add the beef broth. A triple batch of this soup calls for what works out to be 3 litres total of broth and water. So I'm going to add a little bit over 3 litres of broth in total. Each one of these jars holds just under a litre of broth. We'll just stir this in first just to make sure this is incorporated properly. And I'm starting to worry that our 3 litres of broth might not actually fit in. But so with these 3 jars, we'll have just under 3 litres, and we have a half open one in the fridge from yesterday. While this is cooking, I'm going to feed the dogs because Dobby is being a menace to society because he's like a 2-year-old, and he's at the point where he's absolutely starving, and you can see he's not leaving me alone, and he's stealing things from the harvest basket, aren't you, Dobby? You a bit hungry, my boy? A bit hungry. Come on, let's get you some grub. Michael Dublé. Dobbles, did you steal my capsicum again? Did he do it, Ruffy? Is he guilty? He is a big... Oh, Dobbles, that's not your capsicum. Stop stealing things from the harvest basket, Dobbles. Pass it, Doble. You stealing beans again? You are... Pass it, Doble. Ow, Dobby, you're a silly sausage. So now I just need to add my alcohol substitute, the tomato paste, bay leaves and thyme, and I can stir that all in. And whoops, I've already added the beef in. Oh well, whatever. And then I'm just going to let it simmer for an hour and 15 minutes. So my tomatoes are being used as the alcohol substitute, and it's honestly lucky that I canned my own tomatoes because I am all out of crushed tomatoes. So we are now eating summer's produce, which is a bit exciting. And also I was kind of hoping we might not need it till we got to winter, but you know, whatever. Oh, sorry for the sound effects, folks. One of the things I love about Nagi's recipes is that she gives substitutes for things like this for having alcohol in, or she sort of talks about what you could use instead of, say, wheat flours in certain recipes. So it's nice to have someone provide those substitutes for those of us who are challenged in the food department. So once I've got this in, oh, that one's empty. I'm going to avoid putting a lid on it because it is too full for that. I made up the Silverside marinade recipe, and my brain hadn't been working, so I hadn't registered that I would actually need to have made this marinade 24 hours at least ahead of time. So I mixed it up following the instructions and popped it in a Ziploc bag, and I left it in the fridge for 2 days to marinate to get all nice and flavorful before I roasted it. Once my first ever beef roast was in the fridge, marinating beautifully, it was time to get on to the lamb koftas, another Nagi recipe. So I think that made it 3 for this day. And I just was so excited. I just love koftas so much, and the recipe's so simple. So I was really, fingers crossed, gonna love it and gonna be making a lot more. The only thing was I was once again thwarted by a garlic crusher that just refused to crush the garlic. I don't know if I'm just inept when it comes to crushing garlic or if my homegrown garlic is like a rock, but I just couldn't get it done. I did also use these gluten-free breadcrumbs that were expired by a year, but they smelt good and they tasted fine, so I popped them in. Our beef soup is coming along nicely. I'm having to repeatedly scrape stuff off the bottom, which is never a great sign, but I'm still working on that. It's been bubbling away. Now we've got the thing that we're working on next, which is lamb koftas. So I've bought some lamb mince, and I'm going to have a little bit more than the recipe recommends, which is fine. And we've grated the onion, and we've added coriander, and the recipe calls for breadcrumbs, which obviously being gluten-free I can't eat. And it says preferably panko breadcrumbs. They do make gluten-free panko breadcrumbs. I can't even say it once. But I've never been a particular fan of them. I bought these a while ago to try them and never got that far. They're actually expired a year ago. They smell fine and look fine, so we're using them. They're just a gluten-free herb and garlic breadcrumb, and they look more like a breadcrumb than everything else. So we've got our onion, coriander, breadcrumbs in here, and the garlic, and having homegrown garlic has just been the greatest thing because we have used so much garlic in the last 2 days. It's been awesome, and all of it's been homegrown, so I don't even think I can buy organic garlic, let alone afford organic garlic in the quantities we've used it in the last couple of days. And then I've got the herb and spice and seasoning mix, and so we're going to dump that all in and get this all mixed up. Cinnamon is strong. And I mean, the reason why we're making a double batch, even though I've never made this recipe before, it's another Nagi recipe, is because I love lamb koftas. I've never made them myself before. So if this works out, it will be amazing. And so I'm really hopeful that I will like these. Usually the only place I ever buy koftas from is either the butcher or from Costco. And it was Costco that first introduced me to the joy of a lamb kofta. But yeah, I've never made them before, and hopefully we really enjoy them. And I'd love to find a farmer locally that I can buy my lamb from, but so far that has been an unsuccessful search. And because this meat was frozen when I got it, I'm going to cook all of them and then freeze the leftovers. This is dinner tonight for sure. And there is the yogurt recipe. I might attach the links for the recipes below in the description for this video. And obviously if I'm trying to avoid dairy, I'm not going to be eating yogurt. I'll just use coconut yogurt to do that. And I think these are ready to get on the skewer. So I'm going to wash my hands, get out some skewers, and make some koftas. We are getting to that point in making recipes where I am beyond ready to do 16 loads of dishes. So excuse the mess, but that's just where we're at. Now the original recipe is for 8, so we should have 16 koftas. So I'm just trying to work out roughly how much we need to clump these into to make them ballpark even before we start shaping them and popping them on the skewer and getting them all cooked up. One of the things I struggled with in the early days of being wheat intolerant was not knowing what was in everything, and to be honest, not being very reliable at reading the back of each packet. And like, I would automatically assume that lamb koftas were just lamb, and I wouldn't have assumed that they had breadcrumbs in them. So it's been a great learning process about what is in our food as well as what I can eat. Geez, it's quite a big kofta, but I feel like if I squish it out anymore, it's going to fall off the skewer. I already feel like it's going to fall off the skewer. So I might just move on to the next one. To be honest, the skewers don't really add anything. They don't make it any easier to freeze, they don't make it any easier to cook. So I think next time I will essentially just make kofta giant meatball sausage things without the skewer. I've been working on cooking my koftas. I wasn't paying as much attention to them as perhaps I should have, so they will definitely have that nice umami flavor to them. While they were cooking, I was hopefully not splattering myself, peeling potatoes to get this part of the soup moved on. We're also adding frozen peas, and we're going to cook for another 20 minutes. And then this one is ready to go. But this was actually been cooking for a little bit longer than is recommended, and that was because I really needed it to reduce down a little bit more before I was going to be able to put the potatoes in without it overflowing. So ideally I probably should have used a bigger pot, but oh well. Got some nice stuff stuck to the bottom of the pot. But in 20 minutes this should be ready for tasting. In the meantime, I am going to cook the last of the koftas and get started on the yogurt dressing. The beef soup will be ready in a couple of minutes, but for now I've got my favorite plate of all time that my niece made for me. It's got a drawing of me and my dogs and her, and we're going to try these lamb koftas. They smell good, Reffy. They taste good. They taste really nice. I'm really glad I made these. Oh, Dobby, do you want some too? They are so nice. So nice. I'm actually really glad that I didn't pay as much attention to the cooking process as I should have, and they got nice and crispy and all umami on the outside, because that crispiness is just fabulous. No, you can't have any sausage, sorry. This is for sure a repeat recipe, and another one from Nagi that is just so good. I don't even know if these are going to make it in the freezer. And I didn't know if the coconut yogurt would work, because sometimes coconut yogurt can have a strong coconut flavor, but that's just beautiful. It's just so good. So at least in this video, while we might not have made the apricot walnut loaf that I wanted to make, or any of the nut bars, we have got a lot of really healthy food made. We've used a lot of produce from the garden. We have got things ready for the freeze dryer, and now I actually need to change the oil in the freeze dryer and start it up. And we've got a whole bunch of meals for the freezer, and we've worked out what to do with some cuts from a quarter of a cow that I've never used before. So I feel like we have achieved things. Okay, we didn't achieve everything I wanted to, but I did make a colossal mess in the kitchen. And we got a lot done. So I'm going to enjoy the rest of my dinner, and then we're going to try the soup, and I will go to bed excessively full again tonight. And worse things could happen. It's so good. so good. I've just smashed the lamb koftas, so I don't want a huge bowl of this. I just want a little bit to taste and hopefully be delighted with this beautiful broth creation. So we've got the marinated silver side in the fridge. We've made the koftas, and now it's time to try the soup. Too hot. It's nice. I mean, it's not, I like the kofta more, but it's nice. It's a broth stew. It's nice though. I wonder if I'd like it more if I didn't have the flavor of the kofta still in my mouth, but I could definitely see myself doing a lot of this stew in winter. This would actually be lovely, and it's a really nice way to eat the bone broth. I would love to be a warm drink person and be able to just pour myself a broth of broth in the morning, a cup of broth in the morning. But yeah, it's not for me. I can't do it that way. Oh dear. Anyway, I'm going to finish the rest of my dinner. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video and maybe found some recipes that you guys want to try. And hopefully I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Oh, that had a bit more flavor. It's definitely starting to taste nicer, especially as I'm losing the flavor of the lamb. I just needed a palate cleanser. Not reading the instructions on the roast actually turned out really well, because 2 days later I was looking after my friend's kids while she was at a work meeting, which meant that I could get dinner ready for the whole family plus myself. So we roasted some homegrown potatoes and tromboncino, some sweet potato, and we made gravy to go with the beef. And this recipe is amazing. Now, I like my meat medium well to well done. I don't like it rare in the middle, but this was my first ever roast, so I was pretty happy with the way it turned out. I actually think it was pretty much perfectly cooked, but the gravy was the real winner, and it was made from beef bone broth and the leftover juices from cooking the beef. We also had a few homegrown roasted beets with it too. It was just the best meal, and a good sign of a good meal is completely empty plates and serving dishes and a sleeping puppy. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. I hope you've enjoyed it, and hopefully we'll see you in the next video.